Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is me, the Populous Missourian. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a governor prediction because I think during the existence of this channel, I think I've only done like one governor prediction. That was back in 2021. But now that we have all of our governor nominees and such, and since we are now 2 weeks away from the election, today is October 25th, 2022, and we are now 1 week away from the general elections for 2022. And I could have just been lazy and made another Senate prediction, but let's be real, not a whole lot has changed from my last prediction. Excuse me, I'm a little short of breath here. I'm a little sick at the moment, so if I'm taking a lot of pauses to take a breath, then just try to bear with me here because, like I said, I'm sick and I'm kind of short of breath at the moment. So I'm going to try to take it slow here with my talking, and I'm going to try to be as quickly as I can with this, but not too quick to where I have to keep stopping for air every few seconds like I am. All right. Before we get into today's video, though, I just want to remind you all to subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Of course, if you like this kind of content, then subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Of course, like this video, comment down below what you think of these predictions, hit the little notification bell, and of course, go follow my Twitter account in the description below. Now, with all of that said, I think we can now get into today's governor prediction. I've already marked all of these safe states, and yes, I've added Florida into the safe Republican column and Illinois into the safe Democrat column. I will put out a quick disclaimer here that I have been on copium for a likely D Illinois for quite some time now, but as of now, I no longer see that happening because Darren Bailey isn't exactly a good candidate. I mean, I know J.B. Pritzker isn't exactly popular in Illinois, but Darren Bailey certainly wasn't a very good candidate to unseat him. But I'm just going to go ahead and start with Oregon here. Oregon is a very interesting state that has a very interesting governor's race this year. If you would have told me a year ago that a Republican could probably win the governor's race, then I would have called it a long shot, but it wouldn't have been impossible at that time, given how close the Oregon governor race actually was in 2018. But we are now 2 weeks away from the general elections, and a lot has changed. Republican Christine Drazan has been leading in almost every single poll except for an outlier from, I think, Civics that had Democrat Tina Kotek up by like 8. But that's one outlier against most polls at this point. Even though most of the polls in Oregon aren't exactly good ones, most of those polls have Drazan up between 1 and 3 points. Some of them have her up by even between 4 to 6 points. So Drazan at the moment is probably the favorite. We still have to consider, though, that this is still Oregon, so it is going to be pretty tight, but as of now, I think Drazan pulls it off by around half a percentage point, maybe just up to barely under a percentage point. Now, moving on to the state of Nevada, I've had this as a flip since last year, and that's not going to change now. Republican Joe Lombardo is going to win the governor's race by around 3 points against incumbent Democratic Governor Steve Sisolak. And let's establish one thing here. 2022 is indeed a red wave. Don't let anyone lie to you. The polls are all a psyop. These terrible polling companies are doing sort of suppression polls today, mostly talking about CNN with their Fetterman +5 poll or whatever in Pennsylvania, and their Shapiro +15. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But we are not to believe suppression polls, okay, folks? We are not to believe suppression polls. And moving on to Arizona now. Not gonna lie, I think it's gonna be Kari Lake by like 5 or 6 points. I mean, considering just how bad of a candidate Katie Hobbs is, she won't debate Kari Lake. She won't even take questions from the press. She runs from the press, is constantly embarrassing herself pretty much every single day of this race. So I just don't see Katie Hobbs getting it within 5. It's probably going to be Lake plus 5.5 or Lake plus 6, something like that. But, you know, candidate quality isn't everything, but it matters, okay? It may not matter so much in red wave years like this, but it does tend to matter. I mean, you know, there's just so many cases. Like one modern case that I can think about is 2012. You know, with 2012, most Republicans would have probably been able to beat Barack Obama. I mean, Barack Obama wasn't a juggernaut by any means, and he certainly wasn't JFK in terms of popularity. So he could have been easily beaten in 2012, but candidate quality does indeed matter. So moving on to the state of Colorado, that's likely Democrat. I mean, I guess you could argue a case for a safe Democrat. Jared Polis is a pretty popular governor there in the state of Colorado. But for now, I'm going to keep it likely. No, I'll call it safe. Why not? New Mexico. This is probably going to be a hot take, but it's Ronchetti by like a tilt margin. Ronchetti is a very powerful Republican candidate, and I've had New Mexico as a Republican flip for quite some time now, and that is not going to change. So I still have Ronchetti by a tilt margin. He's running against an incumbent governor who isn't exactly popular. She has a scandal within her own campaign where she grabbed a staffer's tube and said some pretty messed up stuff. So, not to mention she has the scandal, and she's not exactly a likable person. She doesn't have a whole lot of energy behind her. Mark Ronchetti is a solid candidate. I mean, he could lose, okay, and most of the pundits are saying that he will lose. But as of now, I'm having this race as tilt Ronchetti. As for Kansas, I think it's Schmidt by 5. Honestly, I just, all of those people that say, Laura Kelly's going to win. Again, red wave year. Red wave year. Even FiveThirtyEight is admitting that everything is starting to trend toward the Republicans at the last minute. This is a late building wave. The Dem surge is over. The red wave is coming back. And it's very important that we realize this. And Laura Kelly is not a juggernaut, okay? She may be the incumbent, and she may be at least approved of in Kansas, but she is in no way a juggernaut. She's very easily defeatable, even by the likes of someone like Derek Schmidt. So moving on to Georgia, this is likely for Kemp. Kemp's gonna win by like 8 points. I mean, Stacey Abrams literally just completely ended her campaign in Georgia by saying that abortions solve inflation. Like, are you kidding me? Way to end your campaign so early. This is Georgia. I mean, she was going to lose by a likely margin anyway, but boy, way to end your campaign on such a terrible note. And Stacey Abrams is an idiot anyway, but my God, can you find at least a better way to end your campaign? Oh my God. So yeah, it's going to be Kemp like 7 to 8 points, maybe even upwards of 10. I know there was a poll that came out, I think today or yesterday, somewhere around there, that had Kemp up by 10 points. So yeah, it's looking a lot like it's going to turn in Kemp's favor by quite a bit. Now, Minnesota. Oh boy, this is a big one. Most polls are saying that Governor Walz is going to win re-election. And here's the thing. Minnesota is indeed a blue state, okay? It's a blue state. I'm not going to act like it's not a blue state, because it is. It's voted Democratic in every single presidential election since 1976, and it hasn't elected a Republican governor or senator in quite a while. That said, a Trafalgar poll came out recently that had Governor Tim Walz and Dr. Scott Jensen in a dead tie. Yes, you heard that right, folks. A dead tie. But I don't think it's going to hold water because they had Jensen with a slight lead. And given it's a state like Minnesota, and I know there are polling errors, but in Minnesota, I don't see a Scott Jensen victory. I see a tilt victory for Tim Walz. I mean, that Trafalgar poll certainly gave me a little bit of hopium for Jensen, but at this point, I just don't see it. Okay, Wisconsin. Likely for Tim Michels. Tony Evers is very unpopular in Wisconsin. Okay? He is quite unpopular. And we could go through that whole thing about Tony Evers' approval rating, but Tim Michels, he's not exactly Cleefish in terms of electability, but he is more solid on the issues than Cleefish is. And really, I like Tim Michels. I think he's a solid candidate for a state like Wisconsin. And I think he's going to win at the end of the day by like 5 points. I mean, Tony Evers is just that unpopular. I mean, you know, it's really not that hard to see. Not many Wisconsinites actually like Tony Evers outside of maybe Madison, Wisconsin, you know, where it's like a super far left base. But yeah, I think it's going to be Michels by like 5 points or something like that. Now, Michigan. Oh boy. This is one of my hot takes right here. So, certain things have been brewing recently in the state of Michigan. And it's turning really interesting, just to say the very least. But yeah, things are turning very interesting in the state of Michigan. And this is definitely going to be a hot take of mine. It's Tudor Dixon. It's Tudor Dixon by a tilt margin. I mean, I know Tudor Dixon isn't the absolute best candidate we could have run. I mean, that would be James Craig, but unfortunately, James Craig was disqualified from the primary ballot. Had James Craig actually been the nominee, then this would have probably been a lean R race. But at this point, I think it's tilt for Tudor Dixon. I mean, Whitmer, here's the thing you gotta understand. Whitmer isn't exactly unpopular. She's not a juggernaut by any standards, and she's certainly not an institution in the state of Michigan like Real American Politics has claimed. I don't happen to agree with that, because if she's such an institution, then how is she beatable? Like, you don't become an institution in a state and then potentially lose re-election. You know, that just doesn't happen. And right now, I have Whitmer losing re-election just based on polling errors alone. I mean, that's really where the state of the race is at right now. So, with all of that said, I'm going to move on to the state of Pennsylvania. Oh boy, Pennsylvania. If you would have asked me about this a year ago, I would have told you it's a lean R race. But we have a guy in Pennsylvania named Doug Mastriano. Now, I personally approve of the guy. I like Doug. He's got the energy. He's got that energy that I like. I like Doug Mastriano. I really do. But unfortunately, I just don't see it as of now. I really don't. Even with polling errors, he loses by like a point or two. And right now, that's what I think when I think about Pennsylvania. Not New York yet. I'll get to New York in a minute. But as of right now in Pennsylvania, it's lean for Shapiro. And I hate to say that, and a lot of things can change before Election Day. But I think this race is going to be a lot closer than anybody thinks. I think there's going to be a huge polling error. I really do. And, well, if the polling average does happen to narrow before the election actually gets here, then I could potentially see Mastriano taking it home. I mean, Mastriano is definitely pretty similar to Donald Trump. Especially I mean, right now I'm just getting so many 2016 vibes, especially with many of these candidates like Blake Masters in the Arizona Senate race. It's just incredible, really, because this is the vibes of this election. It's all just 2016 all over again. I mean, we truly do not know what's going to happen. Accounting for polling errors, this prediction would be correct. I mean, if I was doing this off of polls alone, then all of this would be significantly bluer. But this is based off of polling errors. So anybody who disagrees with my predictions, look, I respect your opinion, and you absolutely have a right to disagree with my prediction. But you can't just sit here and act like 2022 is going to be a neutral year or a blue wave when all of the fundamentals of midterm elections point toward this being a red wave. So historically, this should be a red wave, and I believe it will be a red wave based on all the historic fundamentals. Now, enough about that. We're going to move on to the state of New York because we don't have a whole lot of time left here, and we still have 4 states to get down to. So, New York. This is an interesting one. If you would have asked me a year ago if New York would be in play for Republicans, or rather if you told me that a year ago, I would have told you were crazy. But as of right now, New York's probably going to be within 10. Now, do I see a lean D New York at the moment? No, of course I don't. And I sure as hell don't see Zeldin winning. But Zeldin has some energy in New York that we might not know about. But given that I don't expect that much of a polling error in New York, and potentially even polls understating Hochul in New York, it could be Hochul by around 7 to 8 points. I mean, there's definitely something brewing in the state of New York, but I just don't see Zeldin taking it home. I really don't. But who knows? I could be proven wrong by Election Day. There are some polls for the New York governor race that have it within a margin of error, which is crazy. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Hochul by like 7 to 8 points, probably. Now, Connecticut. If you would have asked me about this race a year ago, I would have told you it's down to the wire. Now I'm not saying that so much because Stefanowski, the Republican nominee in the state of Connecticut, ruined his chances of beating Ned Lamont. He sold out on the LGBTQ plus issues, and I'm not going to talk much about that because, I don't want to get banned from YouTube, but because after all, this is a prediction video. This is not me talking about my political beliefs. This is a prediction video. But as of now, I still think it's probably only going to be Lamont by like 8 points. I think it's going to run roughly in line with New York in terms of the margin for the Democrat. But like I said, this is just my prediction as of now. This is probably not going to be the case on November 8th. So don't hold me over the fire if one little thing is wrong here. I'm just going off gut instinct here and accounting for the polling errors, and past trends. Now, Rhode Island. Here's the thing. Rhode Island governor's race was close in 2010. 2014. But I'm pretty sure it was also close in 2010. I may be completely wrong about that 2010 one, but I do know for sure that it was very close in 2014. And honestly, with Dan McKee being such an unpopular incumbent, I mean, he barely won his primary. He won his primary by like just barely 2 points or something. I would have to look back at that again to make sure I'm not too incorrect there. But Dan McKee is unpopular in the state of Rhode Island, and he's up against a Republican called Ashley Kalis. Not many people have heard of her. She has low name recognition in the state, but I definitely think she could take this within 5. And, just given Dan McKee's approval rating alone, I think it'll still be Dan McKee by like 3 or 4, but I think it'll be significantly closer than it was 4 years ago, when I believe Gina Raimondo won by like 15 points or something. I may be wrong about that too, but as of now, I see it being Dan McKee by around 3 or 4 points. It's definitely going to be a close race, though. Now, Maine. Oh, boy. This is a doozy. If you would have asked me this a year ago, I would have told you that Janet Mills, the incumbent governor there, is probably going to go down. But, like I said, a lot changes in a year. So, if you would have asked me on October 25th, 2021, I would have said, well, hell yeah, Paul LePage is going to take it home. He's going to flip this. Now I'm not so confident. It's October 25th, 2022 now, and I'm not so confident. Which is why I think it's still going to be Janet Mills by around 2 to 3. And I know this is probably going to be considered a doomer take for some people, and some people may even call it a copium take. Especially if you're a Democrat, you might call it a copium take. But I just don't see Paul LePage doing it this year, and I think Janet Mills is probably going to get a second term. But anyway, that is my predictions for this year. I mean, who knows? The elections are 2 weeks away. I could be completely wrong, or I could be right on point like I was in 2021. Who knows? We're just going to have to see. And I'll probably also do a final Senate prediction maybe sometime this week, I don't know. But thank you guys a whole lot for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Tap that notification bell, and once again, go follow my Twitter account in the description below. Thanks all of you for watching. Godspeed to all of you.